Welcome to MRE Uncut, where we'll give you real and practical insights into the real estate scene in Melbourne. We'll discuss what's happening in the industry, all backed by MRE's history of over 30 years in the game. With that said, let's jump into this week's episode of MRE Uncut.
Welcome back to another MRE podcast. My name's Stephen Fitzsimon and I'm here with Peter Hooymans.
G'day, Steve-o.
Pete's got a bit of energy today. and we're also, we've got a guest today, Tilly Gillan.
Hi, everyone.
Tilly's our Director of Property Services at MRE. So she runs the property management department. And today we're going to have a chat about the new legislation from a tenant standpoint, because the new legislation that the government brought in 2021 was designed to provide them with additional rights under the Act. And we want to go through that and have a look at those, examine them in a little bit more detail and see the nitty-gritty associated with them so that we can all understand it. Tilly, what's been the biggest one that sort of jumps out at you that in your change since the new legislation came in?
Yeah, look, there's been a few, but I think the major one for us has been the pets. The pets has been a big one. The fact that renters can now have the ability, to actually introduce pets into rental properties, and rental providers have less of a ability to say no. So
is that midterm or before the lease starts?
Whenever, really, to be honest.
So they could sign a lease, no pet, and then the next thing you go and do an inspection and there's a 6 foot.
Yeah, so the biggest thing for rental providers.
Teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
So
is it? Right.
There's a lot of pre this rule coming in, a lot of renters were sort of trying to hide the fact that they had pets, and we'd go and do an inspection and it's quick, hide the cat, hide the dog, see what you can do, hide all the evidence.
Put the cat in the bed.
Literally, yeah.
Put the dog in the dishwasher.
But the food bowls would still be there. So
that's it, yeah.
They've got odd eating.
Dog
Sorry
hair
to any
everywhere.
animal like that. Someone might take that the wrong way. It's a joke.
Yeah.
We're pet lovers.
I don't put dogs in dishwashers.
No, you'd hope not.
No.
But yeah, so now the fact that renters, I guess, have the ability to or encouraged to and agree to have pets makes it a lot more difficult for rental providers to actually say no. There have been several instances that have presented to VCAT, and there's not been any that I've seen that are successful where pets aren't taken away from properties as such. So making it a bit more, I guess, homely for pets, and it's somewhat encouraging renters to actually have pets for whatever reason. So big change there in that terms
and
of.
how are owners feeling about it?
Not great. No, many owners that are very against it, and not because they want to be difficult or because they want to be the mean rental provider by any means. It just comes down to the fact that a lot of rental providers, for example, may have allergies and their intention is to move back into the property. So the health sides of things, the obvious fair wear and tear.
Yeah, I mean, cutting's just straight to the point. It's like, we're not against renters' rights. Of course not. No. We represent both parties. But it's interesting. Steve and I looked at a property the other day together in Hawthorn.
Right.
It was circa $3 million as a potential rental property.
Right.
And I said to Steve as we walked out, I said, mate, could you smell that? Obviously that had a dog in there.
Yeah.
And I said to him, how do you, knowing his rental expense, I said, how do you get that out? And he was like, new carpet, paint. So it was kind of like a 40 grand. We worked out it was like a 40 grand reno, wasn't it, to get the smell out?
Absolutely,
and it was really strong. So
if you didn't like that dog smell, then you would have to have spent some.
Well,
serious
I didn't.
No, and I understood
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, if a renter wants to do the right thing, and so they're not trying to be a pain in the backside, they're a good renter, they're just trying to do the right thing by the owner. What's the procedure if they want to get a puppy dog?
Yeah, so we strongly recommend to still raise it with the agent in any possible way, giving them a call, being upfront and honest about it. The better that you build a relationship with the rental agent, the more easier it's going to be for you long term. So if you're applying for a property and you're not currently living there, popping it on your application and giving as much information as you can around the age, what type the pet is, and if you've had them, for example, in rental properties before, providing references as well if you can.
It's interesting. I had a question from a renter the other day, like, what is a rental reference for my dog? Can you expand on that?
Absolutely.
The vet.
Yeah. So look, something like a routine inspection report always helps, but giving an agent giving their advice on their experience that they've had with you in a rental property.
Okay.
So the fact that it hasn't caused any damages and you are quite respectful of the property, you've made sure that you've left in a state where it is clean and tidy. You've really looked after the place. I think that's, at the end of the day, from a rental provider point of view, they just want to know that you're caring for their investment properties.
So it's ask permission.
Correct.
Be considerate of the owner in that you maintain the property in a good way.
Correct.
And then when you move out, do the right thing by them and do the necessities when you've got a pet, because we all know that when you've got a pet, you've got other obligations. You've got to get them wormed and so on, and you've also got to get the place steam cleaned and deodorized.
Yeah.
Those type of things
What's
at
that
the end
cost?
of a tenancy.
Out of curiosity.
Oh, I don't think it's too much.
It's not. It's similar to steam cleaning.
Oh.
So
Because the other week we spoke about a detector inspector, and then we had a mold doctor.
Yep.
Do we have a pet person?
Well, it comes under general cleaning, really.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's
just curious because
but
there's
yeah,
another opportunity
pet
in the
problem.
market.
and we support our
I think those
Sorry.
pet doors would probably be selling a bit better than
Yeah,
they have
right.
in the past.
Yeah. And look, I mean, from our point of view as well, we always support and guide renters in that front as well. So giving them advice in advance to make it as easy as possible when
Yeah.
they do.
Enough
vacate.
about pets. Let's
Yep.
move on.
Yeah.
We're in other ways. What other things do you see? If it's not pets, what are the other changes that you see significant?
The heating, providing heating in main living areas is probably the biggest thing.
Okay.
So now
So places didn't have them and now
correct.
need them.
Yeah, and the fact that they need to be energy efficient. So making sure that they're not just your poor quality heater that's
Plug
plugged
in
into the
electrical
wall. Correct.
panel thing that are
It's-
now
Yeah, it actually services the apartment and the property and provides adequate heating.
which in a lot of ways I reckon comes back to the developer and the development.
Well,
Absolutely,
There was
but-
inferior developments built, and we're probably talking more about we manage predominantly apartments, but in the house space,
60s and 70s. Those ones are the biggest ones.
Because how do you get,
Absolutely.
and then because
Yeah.
there's solid brick, etc. How do you get heating in? Not easy. Used to be able to just
Exactly.
stick a panel on the wall. So
And
what
you've got to get OC approval as well,
Mhm.
owners corporation approval.
drilling
if
through
you're
walls.
putting a
Yep.
compressor on balconies or stuck on the wall.
So is that
outside.
what the solution is? A reverse cycle?
Yeah, that's the solution.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
the key thing
absolutely.
is that they say it's got to be a 2-star, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's no panel heater that is a 2-star panel, a 2-star saving for a panel heater. Is it 3-star?
3-star, I believe.
God.
Yeah. And that's the challenge is actually with a lot of the older style apartments.
So they've got to spend
is
$4,000, $5,000.
the functionality behind actually getting that
Minimum,
installed.
probably.
New aircon. I've seen them go in for 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
too bad, but
Yeah.
it just depends where that compressor goes and whether or not they need to do the other way.
What else, Till?
What else? We've seen adjustments to rental properties. So previously, if you wanted to make any adjustments, such as putting a hook on the wall to put your favourite artwork on, for example, you had to get rental provider permission. Now, we still recommend getting rental provider permission and keeping that open, honest communication with them.
Yep.
Why
but that's
wouldn't you?
exactly right.
But I wouldn't.
Yeah, but flip it the other
I'd just
way.
put it.
You put the hook up.
Yeah, I'd go to Bunnings. I'd get one of those things and just put it up.
But correct me if I'm wrong. You've at the end of the tenancy,
Sorry.
you've got to reinstate it.
Correct. You do have to
Oh,
return the property
okay.
in the same condition as to
I
when
sounded
you
like a bit of a
moved
gum.
in.
Oh, sorry.
You're not much of a tenant here. are you?
I'm on both. I'm sitting in both parts here.
Yeah.
But I just
But yeah, look, it just gives a bit more flexibility for renters
So
to
if you
make it
put
their own.
the ones that stick on the wall. I mean, you
Yeah.
just remove them and make sure the paint's okay. That's
Correct.
Then
Yeah.
you're happy days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But you can go a little bit further than that. You were
Mm-hmm.
saying before you can paint walls.
You can paint walls.
Wow.
They sort
Okay.
of define it as anything that will enhance the property. So I think that's where it's a
So
bit
they're
of a
allowed to put
grey
a new
area.
kitchen in.
They can, you know what, if you want to install a new kitchen, then I'm sure many owners won't have an issue with that.
Yeah.
If
But
you
it's
reinstate the 1950s one after
Correct,
those,
yeah.
Right.
but it's just making sure that you're working with your rental provider because you want to make a harmonious relationship throughout that tenancy. You work with them, they'll work with you.
I'm hearing a
so-
theme here.
Yeah.
It's the communication.
Communication, absolutely.
yeah,
And
yeah,
look,
okay.
rental providers are there to be there for renters. The goal is they're providing you their property. They want to make your life enjoyable. They want you to create it to be a home that you want to be part
Yeah, we
of.
don't want
You'll
to have this
stay
like
longer.
tough and tussle kind of scenario where it's we're trying to
Absolutely.
avoid that.
Yeah.
So we've got pets, we've got heating, we've got modifications. What else?
Blinds, blackout blinds.
Ah, yes, we covered that.
This is a
Correct.
big one.
Yeah, so it is a massive one on multiple different areas, I suppose. Privacy being a big one, but creating privacy in spaces that could be seen as an area where you could go to sleep, or it ranges from not just bedrooms, but you have some living areas.
Yeah.
How they define it's actually quite interesting. It can even, if you've got an open style.
How is that defined? Do you know the wording?
Don't know the wording
right.
because it is defined. Well, it's defined in a space that anywhere that can be seen as somebody can live there, so reside there. So
So basically any room that faces outwards.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah, which is on some of those big apartment buildings are looking into other. That's fair. I reckon
It makes perfect sense. So if you've only got a sheer blind in your living area,
the blinds
at
$500
night time it becomes transparent.
Absolutely. So it's not just about privacy; it's about the natural light as well.
Yeah.
So what else other than blinds?
There's locks, creating locks on windows, so providing better security for renters.
Which is
and
mainly
the
your
type
sort of ground floor
locks.
apartments or houses.
Correct.
So it's a bit of a less of an issue for us, but not a big deal really to have those installed.
No, absolutely. And we've been quite lucky in that for many of our rental properties, we were sort of onto it as quickly as we possibly could, and prior to many of the other agents necessarily now who are still falling on the backtrack of that.
Yes.
So, many of our properties are certainly coming up to be compliant and considering all of these things.
Yep.
So what else is rubbish bins?
But the locks one, I just want to go into that. I went round to a friend's house who's renting recently, and they just had like one of those locks that a handle lock that sort of twists, and then you put a key in the outside, and on the inside it's got a button.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You press that in, and that was the back door.
Wow.
And I was sitting there, wow was my response too. And I was like, that's not compliant. There's no deadlock there because it's got to be an external thing. I know I'm the pain in the ass real estate agent.
Can you come around to my house?
Yeah, no problem, Peter. That'd be great. But they just moved in. They didn't know the rules.
Yeah.
It is pretty crap to have one of those doors stopping people from coming into your house. I don't think that's the right way to be. And that's where I think that the new legislation is largely of a benefit to all, because you're making places safer. You're making them more. Well, let's go into the safety one. That's the next one we sort of talk about at this stage, because they introduced all of the safety checks.
Correct, yeah. So the smoke detector, gas and electrical safety checks.
We had Jordan in the other day from Detector.
We did,
yes. That's a big deal.
Absolutely.
It's not going away. I think it's a good thing.
It is. It's great. It just means that properties are kept well, and that tenants.
Well, we were sort of talking about the fact that all properties should have it, not just rental properties.
Correct. I couldn't agree more.
Every
with
time
you.
a person settles on a house, let's say that's out in the suburbs, why wouldn't you get it done?
Well, at the very least, it should be legislated that at the change, at a transition of sale, unless there's a request to demolish it or something like this, then you've got to have that type of check done when a transition of title takes.
And so just playing devil, what else is getting up annoying our rental providers or tenants till?
I think mold's a big one as well. The fact that, obviously we are aware that mold is a serious health concern, so no one wants to have to deal with mold. The fact that it's now considered an urgent repair, which can be difficult at times because is it structural? Is it caused by the way that renters are living?
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Old houses ventilation, but we do have the mold doctor.
We do. We absolutely have the mold doctor. They're fantastic.
Yes.
People to go to.
Plenty of raps. It's as if we're on the payroll.
I just kind of think it's funny how these industries have been created out of this new legislation.
But I see that ventilation one and the mold one, they're interconnected.
Yeah.
But the renters are sitting there going, I moved into this house and now it's winter time. It's coming into winter and it's starting to get moldy. Yeah. At the same time, the owner's sitting there going, well, I've owned that property for 10 years and it's never been moldy before. You send the plumber out, they check, they can't see any leaks.
Yep.
So where's the problem coming from? And, that's where I'd assume you bring in the expert to tell you. So
absolutely, because the origin can come from a range of different things, whether it's structurally, whether it's the way somebody's living, the ventilation, is it adequately
And this legislation, what does it apply to?
Well, you've got to find the root cause, but
Right.
essentially it's stating that mold is considered as an urgent repair, so a property must be free from mold.
So if it's caused by, let's say it's cold, you've got a couple living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and they keep the windows shut, and they're getting all the condensation and build up on the windows and so forth. And the mold doctor goes in and says, oh, well, this is because they're keeping all the windows shut and there's 2 people living in there and it's a little bit tight and maybe they're drying their clothes on a clothes rack rather than through a dryer or through other means. So you've got this problem. Who then resolves it?
It's about communicating with the renters again then to educate them on why it's being caused and what they can do to prevent that moving forward. You've had an expert out there.
So it's the same thing. So
basically,
basically,
in 45 seconds or less, you quickly list the last couple.
The 14 changes.
Yeah.
Vermin-proof bins, windows, latches, mould, blinds, blackout blinds, window coverings.
Yes.
hot and cold water in the laundry.
Yep.
Toilets. The toilets must be in a good working repair. Lighting. It must be adequately lit.
Yep.
So
2-burner cooktop.
20
2-burner
seconds left.
cooktop, Yep. Must have a laundry. You must have a kitchen with a dedicated cooking area.
Yep.
What else
There's
we
a
got?
few.
We've got heating. There's 14, so there's
Yeah,
plenty
yeah.
of them.
So that's okay. So we got
Absolutely.
That's
I think we got
that's
to
a
the
good summary.
So
bulk of them.
in total, 1, communicate with your agent. Be reasonable. Make requests. Make them in writing. And if they're not there, then you can go on Consumer Affairs website. You can check out whether or not they meet the minimum standards and whether or not these are the new legislation and whether or not it complies. And then you follow the steps on the Consumer Affairs website to do it. But use good education, good communication to resolving it as best as you can.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming in, Tilly.
Thanks, Till.
for
You're
having
always
me,
looking
guys.
happy and good to see
No,
you.
that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.
Bye.